Hi, so my name is Logan Douglas, and my research topic was bioluminescence of coral. So some basic background information on coral reefs. They house 25% of all ocean life, which increases the biodiversity of ocean life. Um, they've been around for 240 million years, which predates the dinosaurs, but most of the reefs that are around today are only 5 to 10,000 years old. Uh, They have multiple benefits to ocean life, and one example of this is how they can clean the water of the ocean around them. And coral itself, there's hundreds of species of them, and they all vary in shapes, sizes, and different colors. So bioluminescence in coral, moving into this topic, so the green fluorescent proteins, more commonly known as GFPs, they absorb those damaging light wavelengths to then release them. Uh, this is when they release them, this is what gives themselves the glowing color, and this is a way to protect themselves. They turn those harmful light waves into protection. Um, and this is a picture of it at the bottom of the screen of a coral glowing. So bioluminescence ability in coral can help them with predation. Uh, Coral can use glowing for predation. They prey on plankton mainly. So plankton already originally live on coral. In the picture to the right, you can see the plankton, a glow up circle of the plankton actually living on the coral and protecting it. So when the coral does get stressed, the plankton will leave them. This leaves them vulnerable to outside stressors like heat and sun and those harmful light wavelengths. And this is what makes them, in response to this, use those GFP proteins to create that fluorescent color. This fluorescent color actually attracts those plankton back to them. And in a way, the coral uses this as a way of camouflage to hide behind to get those plankton back to them, to where they can efficiently prey on the plankton to get energy from it. But their main source of energy comes from photosynthesis. And after a coral gets stressed and the plankton leave them, they can develop a dual nutritional strategy after having that fluorescent color emitted, attracting the plankton back. They efficiently prey on them again, and they develop that strategy. But a downside to this is that their ability to acquire the energy that they get from photosynthesis becomes impaired, and um, it's not good for them in the long run at all. So bioluminescence is it has some benefits, but it also can signify death in coral. The glowing color on coral can be a sign of serious problems. The fluorescent light, for one, is a form of protection for them. The only reason they would need protection is if something stresses them. Um, so, for example, it signals to the algae to come back to restore that coral algae symbiosis, which is where the algae and the plankton live on the coral. They protect the coral gets to prey on them, while the algae and the plankton get a place to live. They get shelter. So, a whole example of all this is heat stress. So, the heat stress is the outside stressor, it stresses the coral. This leads to the algae and plankton leaving it being vulnerable to the heat, which then in response to this has that fluorescent light being displayed, and this in a lot of cases can signify nearing possible death. And the picture to the right is an image of coral bleaching. So on the right side of the picture you see the brown original color of the coral, and on the left is the coral when it died, which is known as the coral bleaching, which is just the remaining bones in the skeleton of the coral. So humans do benefit from coral reefs and coral itself. For one, the economy does benefit through tourism, which also creates jobs for people, which all helps the economy. Coral reefs have a natural site of beauty to them. And this is the same thing of like when people go to state parks to see a view of a mountain, they would go to the corals to experience the actual sight of them. This creates the jobs. They also provide food sources for a lot of people living near them. One way is fishing. They provide 25% of all ocean life comes a lot of fish, and this increases the fishing chances in that area to people can actually catch fish. The protection, coral reefs protect shorelines and erosion and flooding from storms. In the picture to the left, you see the deep water at the top of the picture. The middle of the picture, you see the coral reef. And behind the trees at the bottom of the picture, that's the shoreline, the more shallow water. So you can see the deep waves coming in, crashing in. They crash onto that coral reef. That coral reef can actually absorb up to 97% of that wave's energy. So by the time it reaches the shore, a lot of its energy is down and the erosion is minimal. This is very handy in storms, so the flooding from the ocean doesn't happen. Also, medicine. There are some medicines that are originated from coral itself to treat arthritis, cancer, and various different viruses. So human effects on coral reefs. Climate change is the biggest threat to coral reefs. That this is what is killing coral reefs at the in present time at the fastest. Picture to the right, you can see um, the uh, the different effects that climate change has on the coral. For example, sea level rises and storm surges, ocean acidification, ocean warming, and water quality. Each one, a minimal change can have such a great effect on coral itself. Human exploration can also cause a negative impact on coral where humans might touch it and develop near it, which would have a negative impact on it as well. So the location of coral reefs. So in the top picture, you can see the globe, and all those red dots represent coral reefs that are found in those areas. Uh, as you can see, they're mainly clumped towards the ends by the equator in the subtropical areas because that's where the water temperature is most constant. There's no sudden changes in water temperature like in the Arctic. It's too cold for them. Uh, if you can, and at the bottom, you see the picture. That is the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. So if you look on the globe map, look above Australia, you see that big red clump. That is the Great Barrier Reef. It's 134,000 square miles. It's the biggest coral reef in the world right now. So concluding everything and wrapping everything up, they have high biodiversity. They help the bioluminescence helps predation. It's a sign of defense mechanisms, and there's a lot of different relationships between coral and humans. And so it's very important to protect coral, and the bioluminescence of it ability can showcase strengths when they're flourishing and downsides where they might die off. Thank you for listening.